As we all know what is our topic of discussion, I'll just be addressing some ideas as to how you can sort of crack a data science interview. Right, I have Funny here and Shinu. Please feel free to jump in and pitch your ideas as well. And the audience can stop me at any stage in case you feel that I am too fast or too slow, or in case you have any specific queries for which you feel that I have not addressed here. Right. So, what is the agenda for today's presentation? Some of the points of the agenda here would be about how do you sort of when we talk about data science, programming languages become very important. So I'll be talking about how can you master programming language and what all programming concepts that you need to keep in mind. Secondly, how do you sort of implement any programming language algorithmically? Third one is basically get familiar with some of the deployment environments, right? Which is what would be the third point. Fourthly, some of the projects and hands-on experience that you can showcase while you talk. Nextly, how to be, how to let your LinkedIn profile or your GitHub, what your codes and such things that you save in GitHub. I think if you can make your digital presence felt, I think that would speak a lot louder than your words. And some of the popular questions which can be asked, right? It will not be exhaustive, but I'll just try my best to give you a high level perspective about what are the possible questions that you can expect, because you can't possibly be a master at everything. But at least if you are well prepared in terms of these are the 30-40 questions that can be expected, and by and large, if you can play to your strengths, mostly you'll be able to crack some of these interviews. And I'd like to also emphasize on some of the basic points about data science, which you should be good at, right? I mean, data science is obviously a ocean. We can't be a master in every field, but some of the basics, if you can just highlight it, would always help you score points with the interviewer. Knowledge of visualization. So this is the last point which I'll be talking about, how you can sort of be good at visualization and how you can showcase your results if you have an opportunity with the help of visualization techniques and such things. So I'm going to use these points directionally. Uh, Here and there, I'll be covering some of these points, additional points over and above these points which I've mentioned. Is this good? Does it sound good, guys, the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So firstly, guys, in terms of your career positioning, guys, as I said, if I have to just give you an example, if you are in the field of medicine, I'm slightly deviating from the subject here. I'll just come back to this slide. If there are so many things, please put yourself in mute. Yeah, if I'm just giving an analogy here. If you're in the field of medicine, there are so many fields within medicine, right? I mean, you can have an ENT specialist, you can have somebody who's good at orthopedics, you can have somebody who's good at who's a heart specialist. Somebody else could be somebody else could be good with other things as well, right? You could be a gynecologist, right? So same way when you say data science, there are so many things within the umbrella of data science that you need to do a real skill mapping as to what are you good at, right? If you are very very good with, let's say, SQL. Let's say let's say somebody says there's a participant. I'm just giving the example of Kathirishan. He says I'm very very good with SQL. I know inside and out about what is a view, what is a table, how do I sort of load the data set, how do I do a left outer join, how do I do a right outer join, how do I specify a where statement. This is at my fingertips. If you say that you're very, very good at SQL, and at the same time you feel that machine learning and such things may not be your strength, then you can basically position yourself as a data engineer, right? And usually in a typical organization, what happens is that the person who comes first in contact with the data would be the data engineer, right? So data engineer is expected to put the platform. He is expected to make the platform ready so that the machine learning guy can take on the baton from the data engineer guy and start building on the machine learning models and systems. So when I say data engineer and career positioning here, please ask yourself a question as to what is your strength? What exactly is your strength? So if SQL, writing queries and such things, or even for that matter, Oracle or any of your databases is your strength, and you're good with, you have a basic idea of logic, how do I set up the data? How do I prepare the base data? How do I sort of merge two tables? How do I append two tables? How do I create a data set on the fly? How do I create derived variables from the existing data set? If you feel that you have a decent idea about business understanding, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, if you can give yourself 7 and above on business understanding, and you're good with SQL and such things, you might want to position yourself as a data engineer, right? So this is the first aspect. Now let's talk about another gentleman who may feel that, okay, sir, I have not worked on much. I have not worked much on SQL and such things, and building a data pipeline is not my cup of tea. What is this SQL? What is this left outer join? What is this right outer join? What is a cross join? What is a inner join? What is the difference between a where statement? How do I create a new variable on the fly? These are all things which are not my cup of tea. But I really am good with Tableau. I am very, very good with Power BI. I can write a DAX expression very, very well. I can create derived variables. I can create dynamic dashboards. I can make interactive charts very, very easily. Then what you might want to do is position yourself as a business intelligence guy, right? Not a data engineer. So don't worry too much about data engineering and such things. Your forte would be business intelligence, right? I'll again go back to that analogy. A person who's a heart specialist might do a poor job of being a gynecologist and vice versa, right? What is your strength? So please identify yourself as to where exactly you are. And there's no point trying to pretend to be somebody whom you're not, right? So we all have a strengths. So depending on your strength, but you might want to position yourself as a data engineering guy or a business intelligence guy. Or thirdly, let us say, there is a person who is an expert in machine learning, right? I have worked extensively on scikit-learn. I have worked extensively on Carrot package in R. I am very, very good with data science. You ask me anything about decision tree. There are 145 algorithms about decision tree. I'm very good with boosting, bagging. I'm very good with building predictive algorithms. I know when to use a neural network. I know how to detect nonlinear patterns in the data set. I know what's the class imbalance issue very, very well. I can do justice to any question. If this is your strength, then you would like to position yourself as a machine learning guy. You're machine learning, and even if you're good with statistics and such things, you can position yourself within this larger umbrella of machine learning, right? Now, you may have the fourth set of people who say, sir, I am not very good with coding and such things. That is not my strength. I know how to code. I know how Pandas library works. I know how to do a read underscore CSV. I know how to sort the data set. I know how to use Pandas profiling. I can prepare a quick EDA, but that is not exactly my strength. It is not at my fingertips. I may have to look it up and down. But what I am good at is project management, right? How an entire project should be, how you should start a project, how you should take the project step by step and deliver the end result to the business. If that is your strength, then you can position yourself as a person who is good at project management, right? Here, the skills that you are expected would be, to guide your team members in what is the actual language, programming language that you would be using. What is the actual technique that you would be using? Or should you use a RFM analysis or a k-means cluster analysis? You might not know in depth about RFM analysis, or you might not know in depth about what is your deep learning, what is your vanishing gradient problem. That may not be your strength, but you are expected to know what is design thinking. How do I optimize the project? How many resources do I need to plan for data engineering kind of a job? How many, is it a dashboarding kind of a job, or is it a machine learning kind of a job? How will the end results be delivered? For a CEO or a CFO, should I prepare a deck? And for the business guys, I may have to I may have to make it very, very simple, give a dashboard to them. And for the data science team in the client location, I may have to deliver a model. So these are the project outcomes that is expected. And which process would you be using? Would you be using a fluid approach, which is an in-house approach developed by Race? Or would you be using a TDSP method, or would you be using Kanban? So these expectations you should be very, very clear with, and it always helps. It always helps to have an idea about what is the latest process that is used. So if you feel that you're good with project management and such things, you can position yourself as a person who is into project management. And the career path for each of these things would be very, very different. So here, when you say data engineer, business intelligence, or machine learning, these are mainly technical guys, right? There are a lot of people who love technical stuff, right? I mean, they do coding for 15, 20 years. They are not into management and such things. They love, Python programming or R programming. They're very, very good with, learning the latest technology. So to that extent, their career progression will be in one direction, right? That these are the technical guys. Now, usually you may start off as a BI guy or as a statistician, then you become a senior statistician or a senior analyst. Then you can progress accordingly in your field. Now, at the other end, what you have is basically techno-functional guys. Now, when you say techno-functional, basically you fall in the bracket, fall in the umbrella of project management, wherein you know a bit of technical stuff. You also know the functional areas. You know, what are the critical problems in e-commerce? What are the critical problems in BFSI sector? What are the critical problems in, let's say, pharma sector? What are the critical problems, let us say, in insurance domain? So you are expected to be good at both. When I say you, I'm referring to project management. Now, for a typical data engineering guy, he is not expected to know inside out about what is CRISP-DM methodology, what is the latest technology, and how he can optimize the time utilization for the entire project and such things. So this slide, basically, I am encouraging you to think in one direction, and that specific direction. One question that you should ask yourself is, what exactly is my strength? Am I good with programming? Am I good with SQL? Am I good with project management? My communication skills are excellent. I'm very, very good with planning the resources and such things. So if you're good with any of these things, you can position yourself as a project management. So a data engineer cannot be a business intelligence guy. A business intelligence guy may not do an efficient job of a data engineer role, and a data engineer in turn might not be good with machine learning and such things. A machine learning guy may not be good with any of these things. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if you can pull out a paper and say, what am I good at? And if you can rate yourself 8 and above, right? Really, really good with SQL. Let's say you give yourself 9 out of 10. I'm very good with SQL queries and such things. I can just, look at the data and quickly construct a data model. I can quickly do my joins and such things. I know when to append, when to merge, how to do a deduping very, very quickly, how to sort of schedule my cron jobs. I'm very, very good with that. You would like to position yourself as a data engineer. On a scale of 1 to 10, if you're giving yourself 8.5 or 8.5 when it comes to visualization, Tableau or Power BI, then you would like to position yourself as a a business intelligence guy. And similarly, for a machine learning guy, on a scale of 1 to 10, what exactly is your strength? So this would be the first step. So if this first step is very, very clear, then the rest of the discussion that we are going to have will make a lot of sense to you. So if you're a data engineer, why would you want to break your head about what is a R square or a MAPE, or what is a stationary R square, what is your ACF plot and PACF plot? That may not be your strength at all, right? So in the JD, if you see that we need a person who is very good with data, creating pipelines, data models and such things, then basically this is a job which is designed for you. So we are setting the expectations right in the first slide. So this is where I'm saying, ask yourself a question: is it that you're good at functional, technical stuff, or are you somebody who's techno-functional guy? So that should sort of reduce half of your confusion. Am I making sense to my audience here at this stage?
Yes, sir.
So I've just listed four. I mean, there could be, a bit of hair splitting as far as the name nomenclature is concerned. Somebody may say, are you a machine learning engineer? There's not much of a difference between a machine learning engineer and a data engineer. By and large, it would be the same. Right. So nomenclature repetition would be there, but these are by and large the four key areas in the world of data science. I'll make a move on to the next slide here. So the skills, what all skills is expected from a millennial data scientist, right? 15, 20 years back, perhaps some of these skills might not be completely relevant. But in today's day and age, if you're going to an interview, what all skills would you be expected, right? Firstly, I'm writing Excel, right? If you're really, really good at Excel, 95% of data science work can be done just in Excel. 95% of, there are so many add-ins and such things perhaps we have not even paid attention to. So 95% of these stuffs would be readily available in Excel itself. Okay, it says somebody is waiting in the lobby. Should I? Okay. Okay, fine. So when I say Excel, one thing that I would like to emphasize here, what exactly do you need to know in Excel? That's the question, right? So simply put, in Excel, there are numerous features, right? We usually use barely 15 to 20% of the features. I would not even say 20%, barely 10 to 15% of the features is what we tend to use. If you may be a front office assistant, you could be a CEO, you could be a VP, you could be a techno-functional guy or purely technical guy. You could be an analyst, you could be a senior analyst, junior analyst, you could be anybody. You cannot escape Excel. So if I have to basically tell you, when I began my career with IBM SPSS sometime back, for 3 years I didn't have much of exposure to Excel. Then when I moved to WNS, the client had the database in SQL. So we would assemble the base data. But after I assembled the base data, I had to push it into SAS. But even before I push it into SAS, I had to prepare a basic DQ report, missing values and such things I had to do in Excel. And it was a big struggle for me, and 6 months I spent, learning the nuances of Excel and such things. Right now, and a lot of simple things can be done just in Excel. So specifically, if you ask me what all should you master in Excel, firstly, I would say learn what is VLOOKUP, vertical lookup, as well as what is the HLOOKUP. These are two things which you would need to know. Second one is basically, how do you import a CSV file? That is something which you should know. Nextly, you should know how do you, apply the count blank function, right? Because this will help you get an idea about how many missing cases and such things are there. How do you use a COUNTIF function? What is the difference between a count function and a COUNTIF function? What is the difference between a sum function and a SUMIF function? How do you validate your data? So there is an option called as data validation. With this itself, you can do your validation and such things, applying simple rule. Next is basically how do you dedupe or remove the duplicate cases in the data set, right? This is something which you might want to know. Then nextly, conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is something which would make your presentation stand out. Otherwise, it's just a barrage of numbers. You can't make out anything about it. Conditional formatting is something which you would know. And there are a lot of interesting add-ins. One popular add-in with Excel would be data analysis toolkit pack, right? So sometime back, 2 or 3 years back, when I was researching something, there was an exclusive module for marketing analytics, where from Van Westendorp analysis to your conjoint analysis to market mix model to a range of your RFM analysis, k-means cluster analysis, all of these options could be done just using Excel, right? I'm forgetting the name of that toolkit. If I recall, I'll just let you know. So Excel, these functions, I'll just repeat it for the benefit of the audience. VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, conditional formatting, count blank function, sum function, SUMIF function, SUMIF function. How do you remove your duplicate cases? How do you validate your data set? And how do you generate random numbers possibly? And lastly, some of the toolkit options that I said, that should serve you in good stead as far as Excel is concerned, right? So you can't escape a skill, Excel. If you're a data scientist at any level, you would need Excel. Second thing is basically SQL, guys. A lot of emphasis on SQL as well. Basic queries, like I said, how do you create a view? How do you create a table? What is the difference between a view and a table? And then what is a table? How do you join two tables? What's the left outer join? What's the right outer join? What's the inner join? How do you basically put a filter condition? How do you use a nested table? Those sort of things, right? And can you create certain derived functions and such things using SQL? How do you schedule a job? Those sort of things would be required in SQL, especially your select statement and such things, your filter based statements, creating a view, creating a table. How do you sort of then create the schema for the table, right? What's the difference between a char and a varchar? How do you specify the space for each of these things? That is something which you should be good at. If you ask me personally for Excel, assuming that if you have not started Excel, right? I'm assuming that 4 hours per day is what you would spend. Don't take more than a week to learn Excel. Excel maximum 1 week. SQL another 1 week max to max. So SQL would be good. Next is basically Python. One programming language is a must. I have not written R here, but either Python or R. In today's day and age, Python is something which is the most preferred and the go-to tool, especially because they have got two high-level APIs. One is Keras, the second one is TensorFlow. And TensorFlow, to run TensorFlow, you would need a Theano background. So within Python, especially, Pandas library, there is a good Pandas book written by the creator of Pandas called as Pandas data analysis using Pandas, something like that, by a person called as I think it is Wen McKinsey or something, right? He's the creator of Python. I might have written somewhere in the book here. So this is Wes McKinsey. So that is his name. So he's the person who has developed Pandas. So within Pandas, what Pandas does is basically it helps you, if you're somebody who does not have too much of programming background, you struggle to use for loop and if loop, and these sort of things are a big problem. With Python, Pandas library, data manipulation and such things become a breeze. So with Python, three libraries which I would say is, first is NumPy. Second one is basically Pandas, which I was just talking about. Third one is Seaborn. And some people also learn your Matplotlib. Matplotlib is for your graphs and such things. Seaborn is the easier version for graphics and such things. So if you can learn these three things, and on top of it, if you can just learn up what is your scikit-learn. Scikit-learn is the library which we use for machine learning and such things. So if you can learn these three, and then in the first week, just focus on these three, completing NumPy, completing Pandas, completing your NumPy, Pandas, and Seaborn should be good enough. 1 week for this. And then you can just focus from once you are clear with these things, then you can focus on scikit-learn. Scikit-learn, you have a lot of very user-friendly machine learning libraries, machine learning functions. So that should be good enough. If you want to take this one step ahead and also learn deep learning after your machine learning, you might want to learn Keras and TensorFlow, right? So these are some of the libraries that you can focus on in Python. Sir, I'm starting from the scratch. I want to learn Python. It would take you around 3 months to get a hang of Python from a data science perspective. Python has around 118,000 libraries. So I have just listed out 4. R has 11,000 libraries. If you are going into statistical mode and such things, R is very good, right? And Python, there are different libraries. So if you say website development and such things, there's a framework which is called as Django, right? This is just additional information which I'm giving you. So if you want to master your library, something related to, let's say, molecules and such things, if you are into those sort of things, PyMol comes into picture. If you want to develop a website on games and such things, PyGames are there. But from a data science perspective, these 4 or 5 libraries which I've said, NumPy, Pandas, Scikit-learn, then your Keras and TensorFlow, that should suffice. You can just give yourself 3 months to learn Python. Sir, programming and such things are not my cup of tea. I don't want to spend my time learning Python and such things. I'm good with business. I'm good with business insights and such things. I love graphs. I love visualization and such things. I'm good with creation of charts and compressing huge volumes of data. Then you might want to try either Tableau or Power BI, one of these two. Tableau is good, Power BI is also good. These days, especially people, for some reason, prefer Power BI on top of Tableau, right? So these are some of the skills that you would obviously like to pick up so that you stand out from the rest of the crowd. And lastly, there were around 27,000, approximately 27,000. I'm giving you the information 3 months back, right? 3 months back, I was just talking to somebody, and he was saying that he was desperately looking for people in the field of cloud. It could be Microsoft Azure, it could be Google Cloud Platform, or AWS, Amazon Web Services, one of these three things. If you can pick up one of these three things, and it's not hard to pick up these three things, if you pick up one of these cloud-based platforms, your market value would increase a lot, right? In terms of value chain and such things, Tableau and Power BI per se would be slightly lower at the lower end of value chain. If you know SQL, you can put yourself slightly above Power BI and Tableau. Then if you know Python at the next level, level 3, you would be somewhere in level 3. And if you are good with any of these three tools, but preferably AWS, Amazon Web Services, in terms of value chain in the market, you would command the highest salary for cloud. Now, and though people are desperately looking for cloud-based professionals, you do not find too many in the market. So in today's day and age, if I have to emphasize on one skill, pick up AWS. Pick up AWS. So in this entire program of 1 hour on support session, if you can just learn 3 letters, AWS, I have to master myself in AWS, that would stand you in good stead for the next 5 to 6 years at least, both in terms of your longevity in your career as well as the value that you would get from your career. It is AWS. Pick up this skill. It's the most sought after skill in the market. Am I okay with this, guys? Are you able to follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So can move on to some of the popular questions that you can expect. I've already sort of said what questions you can perhaps expect from SQL and such things. Now, from the point of view of machine learning, since this is the hottest topic, what questions can you expect when you are facing an interview? All right. So I've just listed out some of these questions. They are not exhaustive, but it's always good to have good to prepare yourself in this question. One thing is, before we address this part about questions in machine learning, in your resume, please read your resume around 10 times. What have you mentioned in your resume? That becomes very, very important, because in your resume, if you have highlighted a project, let's say, a lot of the times, people speak about Titanic project or Iris data set which they have worked, which means basically it will not stand out, because people know then that, because everybody knows that Iris project, Boston housing data set, these are all a publicly available data set. So none of these things which are publicly available, data sets which are publicly available, will fetch you a lot of points. Right? What people are looking for would be real-time projects that you have worked on. Can you tell me a real-time industry project that you have worked on? So what is the project? So that should figure out in your resume very, very clearly. That I have worked on this particular project, right? Let's say if you ask me, what project have you worked on? Home win-back model for MotorX customers, right? We used to build a lot of insurance models and such things. So this is a project which I have worked on. We used to build around 350 to 400 models. Of course, we had supporting teams and all for insurance. So this is the title of the project, Home Win-back Model for X customers. So usually when questions are asked, people tend to in the interview, when we take mock interviews, they say basically, sir, we have built a dashboard and we built a bar chart, we built a pie chart, or I built a linear regression model or a neural network model and we got 80% accuracy. These are 2 or 3 sentences that they would say, right? Which is simply not good enough because it does not tell me anything. So pretend that you are in an interview, and if I am taking an interview, I would like to know what is the project that you have worked on. So the title of the project, basically, what is the precise problem statement? So the problem statement needs to be highlighted in very, very clear terms. This is as far as your resume is concerned. And thirdly, once you basically highlight the project, what is the methodology that you adopted to solve this particular problem? So when a person says, I have built a neural network with two hidden layers, I am at a loss of words because I do not know. That's the first sign that maybe he is just bluffing because he has not taken me through the process. He has not taken me through the process. You don't build a neural network model just like that, right? So problem statement, what are the data cleaning measures that you adopted? What is the percentage of missing cases that you had? Did you standardize the data? Did you normalize the data? What is the difference between these two things? If you are saying that you use logistic regression, why did you use logistic regression? If you're saying that I used restricted Boltzmann's machine, why did you use restricted Boltzmann's machine? If you're saying that I used t-SNE method, why t-SNE method? Why not PCA method? Did you rotate the method? Did you rotate? Did you use the unrotated solution? All these things, it's a basic process. So in your project, basically the title of the project, what was your specific role in the project, right? Where you can basically say, sir, I was mainly involved in only machine learning. So this is the piece that I am comfortable with. If you're a data engineer, you can basically say, sir, I didn't build the machine learning model. My goal was to build the data, set up the data, and then pass on the baton to the machine learning. So what was your specific role in this entire project? That should come through very, very clearly. Next part is basically, what technique did you use? So some of the popular questions that you can ask if you're a machine learning guy would be assumptions of regression. This is a classic question. Usually 6 out of 10 times if you appear for an interview, they tend to ask you at a very broad level, what are the assumptions of linear regression, right? So there are at least 10 different assumptions of regression. Usually these assumptions should be at your fingertips. These assumptions should be at your fingertips. What do you do with the residuals? What is a residual? What is normality? Should the dependent variable follow normality? What is the problem of multicollinearity? How do you detect for multicollinearity? What are the model diagnostics? These things should be at your fingertips, right? Because if these things are at your fingertips, it means that your basics are solid, right? And the other things, basically, you can expect fewer and fewer questions about the high level stuff. But if a person begins by saying, sir, I built a model, neural network model with 2 hidden layers, we got 90% accuracy, then that will open up a lot of can of worms, right? So firstly, the assumptions of regression, you might want to brush up on this. What are the data cleaning methods that you adopted? Missing values, what were there? If you have worked on market research data, what are straight liners? How do you detect straight liners? If there are outliers, how do you detect outliers and such things? Was it a one-dimensional outlier, or was it a two-dimensional outlier, or was it a three-dimensional outlier? What's the difference between supervised learning and unsupervised learning? And then basically, let's say regression, right? There are umpteen number of regression. Fundamentally, at least linear and logistic regression, if you're clear, it is good. Then in terms of your machine learning model, firstly, basically decision tree. Why should I use a decision tree? When should I use a decision tree? When should I use a logistic regression model? What is a random forest model? Right? What is the difference between boosting and bagging? Why do I need to boost? Why do I need to bag the model? What is k nearest neighborhood method, right? And something which people usually do not emphasize in an interview would be model diagnostics. When you build a model, at the end of the day, you would get a lot of let's say I built a linear regression model. Fine. So what? I mean, right? So you should basically tell the other person, sir, we built the linear regression model, and we looked at we looked at the model accuracy. What is the R square? What is the difference between R square and adjusted R square? This was a standard question, right? If you have a stats background and such things, difference between R square and adjusted R square, you should be able to tell. What is the difference between standardized coefficients and unstandardized coefficients? Which do you use when, right? What is the difference between MAPE and mean absolute error? So this is something which should come crystal clear when you are delivering the project details during the course of your interview. Let us say you build a logistic regression model. You should be in a position to answer a few questions. Usually, the moment you say logistic regression model or any of the classification model, there's a tendency to counter question by saying what was the ratio of the dependent variable. So you should basically understand and process and tell that the other person is asking me something about class imbalance. That's what he wants to know. Did you have class imbalance? If you have class imbalance, how do you address it? What is upsampling? What is downsampling? What is a SMOT technique? These things, the class imbalance, exact vocabulary should be used, right? If you are using the correct data science vocabulary, then basically you can expect fewer and fewer questions subsequently. But if a person is not using the right vocabulary, that itself is an indication that he might not have applied his mind on each of these things, right? So model diagnostics is something which is very important for any of the classification models. Please be very, very clear about what is precision, what is your accuracy, what is your recall, what is the F1 score, when do I use each of these things. Sometimes, people, the older generation people will give you a paper and literally ask you to derive the formula for precision, right? I remember when I faced one of the interviews, the other person actually asked me, can you derive the odds ratio on paper, right? And it was almost like 7 years since I derived odds ratio. So he literally gave me a pen and paper and asked me, can you derive the odds ratio? Why should I not look at the beta coefficients? So he was expecting me to do that, right? So I had to sort of, based on whatever I could, almost 7 years had passed by. So I had to literally derive this and tell him that this is the difference between odds and log odds. These days, they may not ask you that, but at least you should be clear with what is odds ratio, what is precision, what is recall, what is F1, what is ROC, why the hell do I need to look at a ROC curve? If I have two competing models, how do I stitch these models? What's the ensembling model? If the model suffers from low accuracy, how do I move on to random forest? What is internally happening in random forest? What is stacking? What is, how do you sort of, use simple random sampling? How does the simple random sampling concept work in random forest, right? All these things basically would be built into your model diagnostics. So boosting versus bagging would come into picture there. Low accuracy, what would you do? If you have class imbalance, what would you do? How do you ensemble the model? TensorFlow and Keras actually should come into picture later, especially if you have built a deep learning model, then the idea of TensorFlow and Keras would come into picture. But otherwise, if you get prepared for these questions, I can guarantee you 80 to 85% of you should 80 to 85% of the interviews you should be able to crack, right? The models are separate, but I can just talk about that as well. But these are some of the popular questions that you can always expect. Any questions on this, guys? Any questions on this slide?
Gaurav, you had a question in the last interview on overfitting and underfitting, right?
Yes.
Please ask, are you clear on those answers or anything that which you couldn't answer? Any of you, it's not just Gaurav.
Yeah, one question is basically, I just forgot to mention this, ridge regression. When do you use ridge regression? What is elastic net? I've not mentioned this. What is a L1 regularizer? What is a L2 regularizer? How do you sort of identify the optimal combination, right? I mean, I have to sort of, long time since I brushed up these things, but these are good questions, guys. Solid questions about L1 regularizer, L2 regularizer. What is the difference between these two things? When do you use, when do you sort of use a L1 regularizer, L2 regularizer? These questions you can obviously sort of, look at.
Yeah, but sir, one question. Actually, when we talk about the machine learning, I divide this machine learning into two subsets, like unstructured data and structured data. Unstructured data like text, images, videos, and speech, and structured one is where data belong to table form. So these mostly the questions, these questions topics belongs to mostly to the structured data. But I'm just thinking when we are into unstructured data, suppose now we are doing we are into text and all in video. So new employer is looking for the knowledge from these topics also.
Exactly. So I have not finished that. I'll come to how do you, what are the specific questions in NLP? What are the specific questions in deep learning? Those are in the subsequent slides.
Actually, what happens with me in last interview, I'm nowadays I'm going through the NLP and all, but these topics, I know these topics. I could answer this all the questions, but the thing is, I couldn't brush up all the knowledge. So
So have you mentioned in your resume that you have worked on NLP based projects?
yeah,
So within NLP, what all topics have you sort of highlighted there?
word embedding, chalo.
Okay. Okay.
Word embeddings for meme and TF-IDF, word to word.
Exactly. Yes, yes. So basically, the entire process. So you'll be just changing the style of presentation there. Even if you have sort of text data and such things, data pre-processing and such things would come in handy even there, right? For example, as you're mentioning, when you have text data, what are some of the cleansing procedures that you take? How would you use start words? How would you use stop words? What is lemmatization? What are the how comfortable are you with your regular expressions and such things? If the data has emoji and such things, how would you detect it? What are the different types of embeddings that you have worked on? TF-IDF, and one is basically was the goal behind the project sentiment analysis, or was it just to do topic modeling? So you will just be changing the style of presentation, but by and large, the procedure of analysis in terms of data cleaning, data preparation, that will basically change. And I have got a slide on NLP as well, wherein we can talk about what steps you need to, what are the possible questions that you can expect in NLP.
Yeah, the thing is, when you were saying, no, we need to select our strength. So I thought that after the last interview, that I should concentrate on one topic like NLP only. I shouldn't talk about these topics like big data cleaning, regression, and all.
See, ideally
Because
speaking, when
I,
you're talking, see, there are many times wherein people write NLP, but they can't escape questions on regression because these are the foundational topics. People usually ask questions about regression also. They ask questions about regression as well. So even when you're talking about NLP and such things, let us say I want to do sentiment analysis. Let's say I've got a paragraph. Somebody has given me a review about a particular product, and I want to do sentiment analysis there. I want to classify this as a positive sentiment or negative sentiment. How will I do it? I'll have to use logistic regression, which is what I was just talking about there. So once you sort of convert this text into vector embeddings and such things, at the end of the day, you have numbers. Those numbers will have to be basically, to build a model, you have to use logistic regression model, or you have to use any of your naive-Bayes methods or any of these things. So the concepts of logistic regression and such things are still applicable even for unstructured data to a large extent. Okay, so fundamentally about regression, we cannot escape regression because these are the foundational topics. So even when you have to sort of let's say let's say image classification, I am given a set of images and I have to classify basically I have to identify whether a person is suffering from lung cancer or basically he does not suffer from lung cancer. It's a binary problem. How do I sort of classify these images? At the end of the day, I may vectorize and such things. Those are all my data pre-processing. Once I vectorize, I have a set of numbers. What do I do with these numbers? I have to basically use them as input variables, put them into logistic regression and classify them as 1 or 0. 1 basically means that he has a propensity to suffer from lung cancer. 0 means he does not have a propensity to suffer from lung cancer. So these techniques are basically domain neutral as well as it is neutral when it comes to any of the other applications that we are talking about in terms of image processing or text mining, or even for that matter, audio processing also. I will have to use many of these techniques. We can't do away with these techniques and the concepts behind these techniques. Any other questions, guys? Any other questions? I've not listed a couple of techniques here, which is called as SVM. Since Gaurav asked me this question about support vector, sorry, since he was talking about text classification, I remember one project, which not one, several projects that we used to sort of work on, wherein we used to get textual data, right? When we used to have responses about reviews, it could be product reviews and such things, and we were basically expected to classify these product reviews into one of the categories. So we can have a binary class problem, but there the problems that we were working were mostly on multi-class, multi-label problem, right? Multi-class, multi-label problem. And how do you sort of structure the data so that you can feed this and then train any of these models for a multi-class, multi-label problem? So that was a big headache. So more than the model there, how would we sort of restructure the data, text data, and then sort of feed the data so that we could do a multi-class, multi-label problem. So that itself was the data pre-processing itself was a big question mark. Once we would pre-process, then the building the model part was very easy. But there, for us to do a multi-class, multi-label problem, I'll tell you, I'm just giving you an example here, right? So if you go to places like Mumbai and such things, a person has to manually read the review and he has to classify. He had to put a class into, he had to put a class. So for example, if you have a long query, a person has to manually review this and he has to assign a category. And for each document, they charge around 16 rupees. If the length of the text is higher, it would be around 25 rupees. So if there are 10,000 such documents, it is 25 rupees into 10,000. So that is how much they would have to pay for a manual classification. So this is where people would approach us and say, can you build a model with a reasonably high level of accuracy, which would read the documents and then it would classify? Why? For the simple reason that if you give a good support vector machine SVM model or any of your deep learning model or a logistic regression model, which would classify the documents into one of the categories, we don't have to cough up so much of money, right? It's a one-time exercise, but the utilization will be on multiple occasions. So there again, we would build a lot of your logistic regression model, random forest model, SVM model. So this entire procedure of data pre-processing, subjecting the model, and then the accuracy measure as well. Multiple, if you would misclassify into the negative category, there would be less penalty. So we would have to show them multiple model diagnostics, like what is F1 score, what is your recall, what is your overall accuracy, and what is the other ROC curve metrics and such things. What is the AUC curve? Because once we say that this is the final model, they would get rid of this manual coding and then they would use our model. So all these concepts which we are talking about just now, they are not just for structured data. They would be applicable even for unstructured data. Just that the data pre-processing and such things, the style of presentation, the style of cleaning the model, that part would be slightly difficult. So for which I've got other slides after this. Am I making sense, guys? Any questions, please ask.
I think Yashashwini raised hand. Yashashwini, you can ask.
The question is a little deviant from what is discussed, but it is related to the topic.
Yes, please.
When I was recently mentoring one of the students who was trying to get into a job in Google, there was one thing that I noticed. See, now I have come with some experience and I have certain skills that I have. But if I have to go into the market and try to compete, like I'm trying to get into the research field, but I won't get a research scientist position. I have to start from zero. I have to start from a research engineer position. But the guys with whom I'm competing are out of college, straight out of college. They still remember maths very good. They are very good at, very quick at problem solving because they are still in the college years. So that is one thing. Secondly, the rate at which they are learning is far more than the rate at which I am learning. So that is the second point. And the third one is we carry a lot of ego and baggage that we come with. We have 10 years experience and all that, which is something missing in them. And they are open to everybody and learning and all such things. So my question is, when we are competing with somebody who is 10 years younger than us, who is more energetic, who is more intelligent than us, who has more exposure, how do we bridge this age thing and try to make it work to an advantage to us?
Age is just a number. I mean, I understand where you're coming from because a lot of the times you can see a lot of these people who might be fresh out of college and such things. And I had this experience as well in my last company, wherein they were very, very good. These kids whom I sort of interviewed and recruited. I had around 12 of these people. They were very, very good with the mathematics part. They knew a bit of Python and such things very, very well. But once we sort of give them real life problems, concrete problems, and we were trying to build a recommendation engine model and such things, you could see that what they have mostly is they have a lot of theoretical knowledge, but when it comes to actual applied and application part of it, they would struggle a lot. So here they would build a quick and dirty model. They would look at some of these codes and such things and build a recommendation engine model. But the problem would come when we would ask them, are you aware of there might be a cold start problem? How will you take care of it? And in the case of a recommendation engine, where is the training and the test part of it? They would always struggle there. So what I'm trying to tell you is that when you have 10 years of experience, as you're suggesting, you would have a lot of knowledge, other skills which these guys would not have. Your experience would have taught you this. And sometimes there's a tendency in us that we underestimate what is our knowledge as well. So I could sort of guide these people in multiple areas, especially when it comes to problems which they could not even perceive because they had mostly theoretical knowledge and such things. But when it comes to practical exposure, applying this on real time machine learning concepts, what are the 10 different challenges in the recommendation engine? They were completely blank, because mostly they know how to build a quick and a dirty model using Python. Their coding skills were perfect, but the application part is where they would struggle. And that is where I think your 10 years of experience, which you are talking about, which count much more, because I would leverage their coding skills and such things and their ability to sort of read multiple sites and quickly apply with my own experience to solve many complex problems.
So from what I understand is basically the domain knowledge that we would have amassed in the last 10 years.
One is domain expertise. Second one is basically, constant learning and relearning. Constant learning and relearning is because mostly these college pass out kids, not that I'm putting them down. I mean, they're really, really good with a lot of these things, a lot of the machine learning techniques and such things. But they do not actually know what happens when these machine learning models fail. They know how to build a SVM model, but what happens when the accuracy level is very, very low? How would you sort of address that problem? How would you tune your hyperparameters, right? How would you sort of combine? How would you sort of take care of the non-linearity part of it, as well as you are expected to do to get high level of accuracy? That part is what they usually struggle in. So that is where your experience and such things would come in very, very handy, because from my experience, they would be very, very good with the coding part of it. But when we give them real time problems, just one problem I'll tell you: COVID prediction. When we were building, we were expected to forecast what are the expected number of COVID cases for the next 15 days based on symptoms. Correct? They would build a model for the existing data, but in future you will not have the independent variables. I can't possibly estimate what is the expected number of people who would have cough, cold, and lung related problems 7 days ahead. So how they would always come back to me and say, sir, because we don't have the independent variables, how would we even estimate it? We know that estimation has to be done, but how would we do it? The simple answer for this question would be what? That you have to use a simple moving average or a trend to estimate well ahead of time, and then use them as the input variables to predict. So this is where my experience my focus on the data always. If you're good with data and the empirical knowledge, your machine learning part of it, 80% of the headache would be taken care of.
I just want to add, Yashaswini and Mithun, what kind of jobs are we applying for? Are you applying for the jobs which are open to 0 level experience, or are you applying to the jobs which are 10 years experience? May not be relevant. What I am talking about is starting from where do you position yourself with 10 years? You can't say whatever I have already have is negated and I am starting fresh. So starting from there, while picking and choosing the opportunities which are available to the market, you must start from there. And while you're preparing your resume, customizing for that job profile, you must understand why are they hiring a 10-year experienced person compared to a 0-year experienced person. And the way that you would put up your resume compared to a 0-year experienced student, the resumes have to have absolutely extreme differences in terms of connecting it to that profile. So from there, I think picking the right job profiles, customizing your resume to that, and preparing 4 questions and answers which this particular profile is suitable is what you must do, because you have better experience. Now, the interview rounds could be that there could be a written exam, there could be a technical round, there could be a discussion round, multiple such things. But most of the time, if you have 10 years of experience, the questions that which they would put it up for a 0-year experience guy would be very different. And that's where you have to showcase how you can connect the dots. Like the kids may not be able to connect the dots. So don't underestimate any of your knowledge or experience or skill so far you have gained. And you must be in a position to navigate that interview in your favor. Do not get, even if it is Google or whoever that is on the other side, they are looking for problem solvers. So solve problems by the way that you are talking and your ability to connect the dots. It could be technical, it could be techno-functional, it could be business oriented. You must have this way to be as flexible as possible, which most of the kids may not be. As again, we know that kids are doing extremely well, but you don't have to compete with them at all. That's my 2 cents.
It's a wrong battle to pick with, that we are competing with somebody who's 10 years younger than us.
Yes.
Ideally speaking, right? I was about to sort of say that, yeah. So it may not be the right job as well. And if you really have 10 years of IT experience, I think you'd be way ahead of the curve, especially in terms of your domain experience and such things. So that's why I was just emphasizing that if you know, one is basically your breadth of knowledge, right? I know 101 techniques. The other one is basically breadth is good, but the depth, even if you pick up one technique, if you know 100 things about that one technique, that is what would bring out the difference between a person with 10 years of experience with a person with 1 year of experience. He would obviously not be able to match the depth of your information, depth of your knowledge.
Okay, so I got the gist of it, and I will try to use that next time when I'm trying to filter out the jobs. Thank you, Prof, and thank you, Mithun sir.
Thanks. Okay, guys, questions on machine learning. So programming, guys, I've just sort of already highlighted this as to, I'm just putting this from a Python perspective, right? If it is about R, basically, it would look slightly different, because these are all some of the libraries that you would use, especially, pandas and such things for, data manipulation, scikit-learn for machine learning, Seaborn for visualization, matplotlib again for visualization, right? In R, it would look slightly different. It would be ggplot, instead of Seaborn, you would be using ggplot2. Let us say if you are building a model, let's say decision tree, Carrot package would be very, very useful there. If you're doing data manipulation, dplyr package, that would be very, very useful there, right? So if these are the fundamentals, but you can just go to any extent. I know I have not listed packages like Keras, TensorFlow, those sort of packages for deep learning I've not listed. But from a programming perspective, if you can master these three things, NumPy, Pandas, Seaborn, and then these are the three foundation. On top of it, if you can just learn scikit, there is nothing like it, guys. So I think for your machine learning interviews, the top 4 libraries which I've listed, you can just ignore the matplotlib. The top 4 libraries which I've listed, I think it should help you a lot in your interviews. One other thing that I would just like to say during the course of an interview, right? Being relevant, right? Being very, very relevant. Now, for example, if you are getting a call, if the JD is in the field of banking domain, right? It's a typical banking setup. So when you are talking to the other person, it would always make sense if you could give a couple of projects that you have worked in the banking domain itself. If a person is banking and I'm talking about what all problems are there in IT world, how did I solve a problem in the field of government sector, then obviously they will that would be a complete mismatch. So in the banking sector, basically, if you can highlight now that I built a fraud model, that I was able to identify loan defaulters, I was able to specifically build a credit risk model for a particular product, and this is the value add that we were able to bring, then I think that would a lot of bring in a lot of connect between the interviewer and the interviewee, the person who's right, because you're giving relevant examples, and that would sort of cement some kind of trust between the two of you, right? And particularly so banking, if you're appearing in the field of banking, please talk about credit risk analysis or fraud modeling and such things, NPAs and such things, and how machine learning models can be used there. And secondly, if you're facing an interview in the field of e-commerce, there if I talk about credit risk modeling and such things, then the person would not have would not be able to respect you much or appreciate you much, though you're saying all the right things. All the right things, you may not be able to, he may not be able to respect you much, right? So in the case of e-commerce, if you're appearing for an e-commerce, it would be right for you to know, at least, do a bit of, due diligence and ask yourself, what are the 3 specific models in e-commerce that I can talk about? Recommendation engine. What are the 3 highlights of this? What's the long tail problem? How do I sort of, solve the long tail problem? What is the cold start problem? What is the difference between an item cold start? What is the difference between a product cold start? And what is the system cold start? The specific problems of data sparsity. In a recommendation engine, not everybody will buy every product. Not all products will be bought by every individual. So how do you address the problem of data sparsity and such things? What is collaboration filtering? What is a IBCF model? What is a UBCF model? You see here I'm not talking about a logistic regression model itself, because on the other person might not understand at all about what is a logistic regression model. They don't care a damn whether it is logistic or any of these things. So don't highlight any of your typical machine learning models at all if the person in front of you is from e-commerce space. Similarly, if you are talking about digital marketing and such things, you might want to specifically highlight A/B testing. How do you use A/B testing? What is the difference between your conventional A/B testing and what is the difference between your Bayesian A/B testing, right? And what are some of the key metrics that you would look at? You might want to speak about Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, and if you have some good experience there, a digital marketing guy would be really, really appreciating that kind of a conversation, rather than talking about F1 score or or a recall kind of a metric, which may not be relevant at all. So depending upon the specific field, you can position yourself accordingly. right? For example, if you're getting a lot of offers from a lot of requirements from a healthcare sector, identify what are the specific challenges that they are facing, and specifically focus on what kind of machine learning models would be relevant in that field and how you can solve a problem there. So usually, if it is relevant, the people on the other side, basically they will be able to appreciate. Target, or let's say Walmart, if you're appearing in interview, basically they don't do high-end analytics and such things. If they do, mostly it would be about market basket analysis. It should be as close to it as possible. That's what I'm saying. Product association, how do you sort of do control versus test analysis. Those are the sort of things that they would appreciate, rather than something which is irrelevant to their domain, right? So machine learnings which are relevant to that particular domain, that is what you need to highlight. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Does it make sense? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes, and so this is where I would always say, if you can create. I always say when I begin applied statistics module, I always tell participants you should at least have 10 or 15 mini projects, from each domain, right? Insurance domain, just do a bit of EDA and such things. Banking domain, do a bit of EDA, build a model in EDA domain. Then you'll be able to understand what are the specific challenges, what are the specific metrics that you would be relevant in that specific field. And one of the things here, Yashaswini, which I would like to emphasize for your earlier question, between 10 years and a person with 10 years of experience and a person who is junior, right? It is not always about the machine learning model that you build. It is not always, he can build machine learning model, you can build machine learning model. That is one way of looking at it. Second one is, for your machine learning model to be better than somebody else's, feature engineering and such things play a very, very vital role. And when I say feature engineering, deriving new variables from the existing data. Usually I can tell you from my experience, if you take variables like income and debt, it may not make a huge impact, and the overall accuracy and such things may be low. The same thing if you take a ratio variable, if you derive a new variable, which is the ratio of debt to income, number of credit cards divided by number of, let's say, I'm just saying, if you derive a new variable, that art of deriving new features from the existing data, let us say product duration, what is the tenure that he has spent with your company and such things. Has he spent 2 years or 12 years? Deriving these new features, that is an art which a college pass out kid might not be able to think as well. This is where your experience comes into picture, wherein you are in a position to derive new variables, and these derived variables, new metrics that you are deriving, that will have more predicting power than raw data. So you should, your 10 years of experience should be put into picture here, wherein you can derive new meaningful metrics. Banking domain, there are a list of metrics that you can actually derive, which have greater say, which have greater effect on the overall accuracy rather than the raw data.
Yes, I got it.
Usually, this with 10 years, your subject matter expertise will be a lot higher as compared to a guy who has just come out of the college. Okay, let me just make a move on to deep learning. So in deep learning, some of the topics and some of the problems, we start off with fundamentally people ask what is the difference between deep learning and machine learning. Here again, some of the concepts, if you are using any image embedding, it could be SqueezeNet, it could be ImageNet, it could be ResNet. It could be not ResNet, sorry, it could be SqueezeNet or ImageNet, or it could be it could be any of the Google APIs that you use to create these vectors, vector-based vectors extracted from the images. You will get 3,000 to 4,000 new columns. Now, how do you shrink it? how do you, so you can't feed possibly 2,700 variables into the data set and build a model with that, right? But image net data set, any of these image embedders will generate a massive number of columns. So how do you sort of hammer it down, reduce it to a few metrics? So these are certain questions that you would want to prepare on. So this is where your RBMs, restricted Boltzmann's machine, or your T-SNE method would come into picture. For example, let's say you're trying to fit a manifold, right? Why not use a PCA? Why should we use a T-SNE method, T-variate stochastic neighborhood embedding method, right? If you're putting this in your resume, you should have a clear-cut answer saying that a PCA method is not designed to handle nonlinear patterns. But if you're talking about T-SNE, T-variate stochastic neighborhood embedding method, it can trace the path of a manifold. A manifold is basically like, a S-shaped curve which is non-intersecting, which does not have a feedback loop and such things. When you have such nonlinear patterns, a T-SNE method is able to account for it a lot better. So you should have clear-cut answers about each of these things. If you have a vanishing gradient problem, what would you do? If you have an exploding gradient problem, what would you do? Where would you use a LSTM, right? And what are the typical problems that you would face while using a LSTM, right? If your gradient descent method is not giving you optimal accuracy, how do you use a Ramsey, or how do you use a Adam optimization? Have you tried building the model with these hyperparameters, right? So in deep learning, you can expect any of these questions. So some of these questions which I've just highlighted at a very, very high level. I hope this makes sense. NLP, I think some of these points I've already covered while addressing Gaurav's question. Like vectorization, there are so many different methods of vectorization, right? Like Glau2Vec, TF-IDF, bag of words, term frequency, inverse document frequency, and your final output may vary, right? So you'll be just, if you are highlighting NLP, you should be good with your regular expressions and such things. Otherwise, if you're not good with your regular expressions and such things, the NLP model, you'll always struggle with NLP models, right? So sentiment analysis that you build, how do you sort of get the polarity scores? This is a question. How do you assess the polarity scores? What is the output of Vader? What is the difference between Vader and text blob? Right? When do I use BERT method? Right? How do I capture the patterns in the words? What is the kind of architecture that I need to use? So that would depend upon whether you're predicting a word or whether you're doing a language translation. What exactly are you doing? So if you're putting NLP, please be sensitive to all these questions. You can expect any of these questions. So what you put in your resume, that is where you can expect a lot of questions. If you're not clear with NLP, there is no point saying that one project I've done on NLP, because then if you put saying that I have done an NLP project, then the other person will likely ask you a lot of questions on NLP, right? And his questions may be, in-depth questions on regular expression, sentiment analysis, based on the polarity scores and such things. How do you sort of divide the document? How do you build multiple models? These sort of questions you can expect a lot. So if you're not comfortable with NLP based questions, don't put that in your resume at all. Don't put that in your resume at all. If you are putting that, you should have actually worked on at least 6 to 7 NLP based projects. Then you will be able to understand inside out, when do I use what? What are the merits of using Vader versus text blob? How do I use an ensembling model here? What is the role of lemmatization here? What is a word cloud here? How do I use, which library in NLP serves me best? All these questions you will be able to best answer if you have built around 6, 7 projects. So if you have just built 3 projects on NLP, I would say that you are still learning NLP. Better not to put up these projects in your resume, right? So that's why I said in the very first slide, identify what is your strength. A person cannot be good at everything. A ENT specialist is a ENT specialist. He may not be good with liver. A guy who's good with liver might not be good with heart. A guy who's good with heart might not be good with the orthopedics and such things, right? So if you can identify your strength, and NLP, if you ask me, solid 2 years of work you should have done only in NLP. If you're putting image processing, solid work on image processing for minimum of 2 years, you should have worked with different models of image processing. And then basically you can claim that, okay, I know about image processing. I'm good at this. These are the problems. Image segmentation I have done. This is the method I have used to do image segmentation. Then you'll have the confidence. But based on 1 or 2 projects, I would always say refrain from using all these jargons. People get carried away with jargons. They think that by putting jargons, they'll get selected. But I would say for all practical purposes, it is avoidable if you have not worked extensively on each of these. So that has brought me to the end of this topic, guys. I think I overshot my time. My apologies for it. If you have any questions, please ask me, guys. And as a best, sorry, yeah.
So you said we need to complete a few mini projects in each domain. Can we show those mini projects in our
No. Unless it is a real-time live projects, don't show anything. Nobody respects any Kaggle-based projects and such things. These mini projects are for you to get a feel, at least open your eyes that these are the problems that are existing in the market. That will help you at least, that is just like setting the tone. But in the resume, please don't highlight any of the mini projects unless you have worked on a real-time project and solved a real-time problem. It is better not to say these things, because mostly the other side will also be aware, right? So they'll know that, okay, this person has just worked on some Kaggle-based project. That is what he's just highlighting, and your respect will naturally come down. These mini projects which I was talking about are just for you, like a hobby. You can just sort of do it so that you get some idea. You can get some idea, like these are the variables that I have to create. This is what is a specific problem in the field of campaign analytics. This is how marketing mix models are built. These are the shortcomings with the existing approaches, and therefore I need to specify a correct method and such things. Those are all for your experience only, full stop. Don't show that in the resume.
So experience means domain-wise experience, or else you are saying
domain-wise as well as coding experience. Domain-wise coding experience, and to just remove your fear of that particular area of that particular area.
So I'm just thinking how what could be the way, means how can we explain? Okay, we are dealing with the suppose we are dealing with the healthcare projects in the healthcare domain, but I just want to present. I want to just portray that like I have knowledge in insurance also, insurance domain also. I can solve the problem in machine learning in insurance. So how can I represent that idea?
Honesty is the best policy, I would say. I mean, usually, we can't goof up, because you will be found out. Even if you get selected, you will be found out. So if there is a specific, if there is a healthcare domain and I get a interview call, and usually people in healthcare and such people, they are not very particular that you have healthcare experience only. They're not very particular. But banking people, finance people, they're very, very particular that you have experience in their domain. Only then they'll allow you in. If you do not have sufficient experience in banking, you'll not be able to go to the second and the third round, right? But in other generic areas and such things, you can be very, very upfront saying that, boss, I am not an expert in this area, but based on my experience, and that's when you can say, I have some experience wherein I have tried building certain models. I've constructed certain mini projects and such things. And based on my experience, these are some of the areas that I am aware of. I know how to do a control test model. I know what is power analysis. I know how to do sample size estimation and such things. I can do experimental designs. What is randomized block designs I can do. What is split half technique I can do. These are all some of the techniques. But I do admit that I do not have first-hand experience in working on healthcare data. Be very upfront and categorical about it. Right, and usually most of these people, at least these mini projects, usually people give you a chance when you are very, very honest and you say that I don't have sufficient experience in this particular domain. Usually the next question would be like, which domain have you worked on, right? You can cut which domain have you worked on, and what is the kind of modeling that you have what is the kind of models that you have built on this domain. But that will be a very, very uneasy conversation because you may be speaking about insurance, but the guy in front of you is in healthcare, right? So it will be a complete mismatch. You're talking about some other model, general insurance model. How is it working? His expectation itself will not match. So I would again say here, this is where your mini projects and such things that you've built will help. And you can always say, sir, I've built certain mini projects and such things for my learning. Can I discuss those projects? If he says yes, you can discuss those projects. Nothing wrong with that.
Okay, and one more, sir, one more question. In cloud services, when you are saying about the AWS, how can we means tell to the interviewers, okay, I have knowledge, means only means I have, just suppose I am certification for AWS, but I just want to show some projects and all, like, because he can answer, he can question anything from the cloud AWS. AWS is the vast.
You're right. You're right. So here, basically, you can say there are 101 services in AWS. So you can basically say upfront, or in the resume also, you should mention clearly that I have specifically worked on AWS SageMaker only. Right. I have worked on AWS SageMaker. I have worked on SageMaker for building machine learning models. I have, worked on S3 buckets for, pulling in the data and such things. There's no point talking about, some stray service which you might not have worked on. So if you specifically mention saying that I have worked on SageMaker for machine learning models, and for me to pull in data and such things, I used to use the S3 bucket, then again, your credibility will be higher, and you will not invite questions other than these two areas only. So the more granular you are, the more specific you are, basically that much clarity of thought process you will have. And usually unwanted questions, irrelevant questions will not be asked during the interview. That's what you can say in the resume. Also, I've specifically mentioned, don't just say I worked on AWS. Say specifically which services have you used. AWS SageMaker. Within AWS SageMaker, this is the model. I've used the k-means cluster analysis. I've used XYZ. For deployment purposes, I've used another service. If you have deployed the model in reality, you can just say I've used this particular service from AWS. Thirdly, if you have used a lot of Lambda services and such things, you can mention basically I've used a lot of Lambda services and such things, and my area of expertise is this threefold: SageMaker, Lambda services, S3. If you ask me any other question apart from this, I may not be the right person.
Okay, so if I am having limited knowledge only, that is limited to AWS SageMaker, that is enough as a machine learning engineer.
Yes,
Because,
that's why I said in the first slide, I said, right, what is your strength? If you're saying that I'm a machine learning guy and I know AWS SageMaker, I think that is good enough. Right? You can always say basically, what about other services? I'm always open to learning, but in my previous job, this is the experience and the exposure that I got. I'm always open to learning. If you are open to learning some other services and such things, you can obviously say that. But if he is expecting some other service and you say that SageMaker, then that will be a complete mismatch. And the first project that you may work on may be about some router, and you have to fix some router and such things, and that may completely be irrelevant. So it's always better to say within AWS, I worked on SageMaker only. Within Azure, I worked on Machine Learning Studio only. Within this, I have experience in XYZ service only. If you list it out, that will give a lot of clarity to both of you guys. And you can't be an expert in every technology. Don't worry. Never hesitate to say that I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's okay, fine. You can't. One person cannot be an expert in every subject. So if you don't know something, please be upfront and say, I do not know. Maybe I know. I have worked 3 years. Don't get into that conversation at all. Either you know or you do not know. Right. So just say that I do not know this service. I never had the exposure and I never had the exposure or the inclination to work on this earlier. But if it is absolutely mandatory that I have to work in this company, I'm open to learning this. That should be good enough. Any other questions, guys? Any other questions? Just one point, if I can say, right? I mean, even before you face an interview, it's always good to have a mock interview, right? You can just face up, you can just maybe at least 10 mock interviews on one topic, 1 or 2 topics, right? You can ask Funny to quiz you on some questions, or your friends, so that your vocabulary and such things become very, very clear. I built a model, I got 80% accuracy. The presentation style itself looks so unprofessional that you may not clear. On the other hand, if you use the correct vocabulary and such things, and that takes around 10-15 mock interviews, you can do it with me or Funny or your friend, or it could be anybody, so that the vocabulary basically sinks in, right? This is the regularization function that I used. This is the additional term that was there. And usually my own assessment is that if you are good with one project, you can spend around 1.5 to 2 hours explaining during the course of an interview. You can explain about that one project itself for 1.5 to 2 hours. Right? I have spent, when I was being interviewed, I have spent 1.5 to 2 hours explaining that one project inside out. So that was like, that was so comprehensive that other questions from other topics never arose. But if you're not that's why I emphasize on depth, not the breadth. It's okay, you may know 50 things, but knowing one thing about 50 algorithms, it is always inviting trouble. I would always say pick up one technique and know 50 items about that one technique. One technique, know 50 items or possibly 500 things about one technique. You will always come out holding your head high in the interview. You'll always clear 9 out of 10 interviews. But the problem is we try, usually, I feel that out of maybe insecurity or something, or maybe you feel that you have to impress the interviewer, we put up a lot of techniques. I know BERT technique, I know LSTM, I know gated recurrent unit, I'm good at R, I'm good at Python, I know what is ggplot2, I know this, that, I've worked on SQL. So which means basically it is a lot of breadth, not the depth. Focus on the depth. You'll usually, ace in your interviews. That's one suggestion that I can give from my personal experience. What you do not know, don't worry about it. You may not know 101 things, but what you know, and every word that you put in your resume is like you're saying that I know this technique, and you better know it very, very well. Right, you better know it very well. So if you're saying that I have worked on a logistic regression model, you know inside out about that logistic regression model. If you say I'm an expert in image classification, you know inside out about image processing. You don't need to know what is the difference between text blob and Cloud2Vec if your core area of strength is image processing. And that's why I'm saying image processing, if that is your cup of tea, you have to spend 2 years at least learning only about image processing inside out. Right? Bit of chow chow bath, bit of text mining, bit of image processing, a bit of structured data, that will never cut the ice usually in an interview, right? Become a specialist. That's what I'm saying. Become a specialist in one field. You might know a few ideas about other things, but always become a specialist in one area. Image processing, go in depth. NLP, go in depth. If you're saying deep learning, go in depth. If you're saying something else, go in depth of it. 500, 600 things you should be able to learn, right? About that. What are the potential problems that can come out of that? Right? So then you'll obviously be able to pick more relevant battles, not irrelevant battles. Never waste your time by fighting irrelevant battles. Fight relevant battles. This is what I want. This is what I want to know. These are the problems that I would like to solve. Right? What you do not know, that's fine. You don't have to worry about that. I see one hand. I think Yashaswini, you had a question, please.
The question that I have is, there is this field called responsible AI, and there has been a lot of traction in that area. But in India, the kind of jobs that we have in that space are very limited. Now I am at this juncture in life that I am at crossroads. Either I can, and this responsible AI is less of coding, less of machine learning, or less of deep learning, and it is more about problem solving. It is a very good area, and it has a lot of money in terms of grants, a lot of money in terms of specialized jobs that are there. There are very few jobs, but those are very specialized jobs. So I'm at this crossroads where should I take this new field which is just coming up, It is promising, like explainability and all of that. Should I go with that? Or should I stick to something that is safe? Like for example, recommender systems. Recommender systems is very safe because it has been around for almost 20 years. There has been a lot of literature about it. The number of jobs in recommender system, if one really masters recommender system, is really good. It is not a area that is not upcoming, or it is not an area that is not having good market value. So there is a lot of money involved in recommender systems because any e-commerce or any media recommenders that are out there, they get a lot of money. They need to get a lot of money using the recommendation system. So they'll put in a lot of money into the development of the recommendation system. So now I'm at this juncture, whether I should take something that is enticing, which is new, which is just coming up. And I'm sure that responsible AI will stay for the next 10 years. No doubt about that, or whenever till AI is. Or should I stick to something that is safe and which has a lot of money in? Responsible AI does not have a lot of money involved in it. Like I may not be able to make a lot of money out of it. See, when I say lot of money, I don't mean crores of rupees, but at least a good job with a comfortable life. But recommender system is somewhere where it has a lot of economic value, and any job in recommender system, it pays really well, and the scope is also really good in the future. So this is my question.
Okay, Yashaswini, firstly, my question back to you would be, what excites you? At the end of the day, what excites you? You know, in the market, there'll be 101 jargons, right? So every Tom, Dick and Harry will come up with a jargon. There is something called as ML ops. That is also supposed to be very well. We have spoken about cloud. Somebody will talk about Kubernetes. So every 6 months or something, there's a lot of hype about one or the other concept in data science. So now it is about responsible AI. After 6 months, you'll see something else come up. So what I would always say is, what excites you particularly? I mean, if responsible AI and such things, if you have done some due diligence, if you have read through some of these things, and you think that, I'm happy, I will be happy doing responsible AI. It is my cup of tea. I want to spend the next 4 or 5 years exploring responsible AI. If it really excites you, if it gives you goosebumps, go for it. On the other hand, if you feel that recommendation engine is something which I have learned, and I think you picked up recommendation engine from what I gather, quite a few things about recommendation engine. Within recommendation engine itself, I think there are so many problems which are unsolved. There are so many problems which are unsolved, which you can still solve. So now that you have got a good understanding about recommendation engine, I would suggest try to become a specialist or a master in recommendation engine from what I know about your past work, because there are so many unsolved problems in recommendation engine wherein you can do a lot of justice in. Right. Otherwise, what will happen is that 3 months I'll do ML ops. 4th month I'll jump to responsible AI. Next I'll pick up something else. We'll become just jack of all, master of none. Right. And the corporate sector does not, in general, people do not value somebody who's a jack of all, master of none. Pick up something which you can ace in and become a real authority in. Right. And once you become an authority in all these things, then perhaps you can try all these new jargons, techniques, concepts, and such things. You can just keep doing it. But you would need that one stronghold, which is your forte, right? If recommendation engine is your forte, any question in recommendation engine anybody has, the person you should be the go-to person in that field. If you have reached that stage in recommendation engine, always pick up something else. So is recommendation engine is what excites you? That's what I began by asking. What excites you? Is it responsible AI, or your heart still beats for a recommendation engine and such things? Secondly, have you mastered recommendation engine firstly before you can spend your time, energy, and such things in other areas? That's these are two things which I wanted to know from you.
So the answer is very simple for me. for the first question. The second question, the answer is no. Have I mastered everything in recommender system? No, not at all. Today they released one book, Recommender System Handbook, the third edition. So they have collected the recommendation system chapters from all over the world, and this is like Bhagavad Gita. So that book is like Bhagavad Gita, and this is the third edition that has come out for recommender systems. So what I'm trying to tell is, for the second question, the answer is surely no. There are the topics which I still learn every day about recommender systems. And I have not been an expert on many of the basic stuff itself. So the first
You've answered your
question,
own question, I guess, right?
huh?
I think you've answered your own question, right? I mean, since there are so many untouched areas in recommendation engine, and I feel that you can go in depth of recommendation engine, right? I mean, I think in the best of schools and colleges, to get a PhD degree, minimum of 100 books is what you are supposed to read in that particular field, so that you become a master in that particular field. And Shinu can correct me if I'm wrong. I heard this somewhere that if you have to get a good PhD degree from one of the best universities in some of the best universities in the world, at least 100 books you should have read. That would give you solid foundation in that particular area. So I would say, since the recommendation engine you have started off, go in depth of that subject, try to master that subject, try to be an expert in that subject. You can always keep updating your knowledge about responsible AI and such things from time to time, but I always value specialists and experts in any field, right? So if you can become an authority in recommendation engine firstly, right, I think you would have done a lot of justice to your talent.
Okay, thank you. That was really helpful to me, because I'm at this crossroads where I have given myself 6 months and I want to try for job seriously. In 6 months, either I can do that or this. I cannot do both. And even when I'm applying, I can apply for one set of things. I can have one face. I cannot have two faces. So I
Yeah,
can have one face, and I can say that I'm a recommendations system coder,
expert. You
and
should
I
become
can
a
build
real
recommendation
expert,
system.
saying that this is what I have done. These are the problems that I've solved. Right.
Okay.
In data science, never don't be. You're never short of jargons. Every 3 months, some chap somewhere comes up with a new concept. You should know it, but you can't possibly master every idea in these things, right? So if you try to master 3 months in MLOps, next fourth month I will go to Kubernetes. Next 1 month I will do something in responsible AI. Then nothing works. Then I'll come back to recommendation engine. You'll not be, will not be anywhere. So pick up one area of specialization wherein you can really go in depth of it, in depth,
Okay.
master that. And from time to time, it's always good to, know at least what is happening in other areas. But your area of specialization should be, one area recommendation engine. That is my suggestion to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Become a master. Don't become a master, become a specialist. That's something which I always say. Always become an expert in a subject, become a specialist. Never become jack of all, master of none. It will not serve any purpose. Eventually you'll be frustrated because you'll know everything, a bit of everything, but you're not an expert in anything, so you'll not be able to solve any problem as such.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think we are running out of time. If you have still questions, please do connect. Mithun, Funny, all of them are there. Right? Mithun, shall we close?
Yes, I think it has become a 2-hour session.
Yeah, because Mithun is in the campus still, so and he has to go a long way to his house. Okay. So thanks everyone for joining. But these sessions are great. But what we see is the reciprocation of working on your progress on interview questions. Keep a notebook. Create your own little bit of notes or publish some of these in open media and create your own little way of handling these questions. So do not get surprised on the interview table that these questions have been asked. So please work hard and Nothing can stop you. Okay, so thanks Mithun and thanks everyone.
Thanks, Shinu. Thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you, Mithun.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mithun, sir.
Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.